14 November 2021, the Avon Town Council meeting. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Julie, would you mind taking the roll call, please?
Steve Eisenbarth,
Present.
Robert Pope,
Present.
Aaron Teveball,
Present.
Don Loudon, Greg Zuzin,
Present.
Tonight we have a Nova Award presentation. Jared, you've got that one.
Good evening, council members, staff, residents. Glad to see so many of you out here tonight. My name is Jared Wade. I am the communications director for the town of Avon, and I have the pleasure of presenting our November 2021 Nova Award. As you all know, the Nova Award is an award that celebrates the good that is happening in our community. Nominations are submitted online, and then once a month, one of those submissions is chosen by our committee to be that month's recipient. The month of November, we would officially like to recognize, he's sitting right there. His name is Mike Clark. Mike, can you come on up here? Mike Clark, thank you, sir. Nominated by resident Nicole Abernathy. Mike Clark is a staple in Avon. Not only does he know each and every single person, he goes above and beyond to donate every second, literally every second is what she said, of his time to the town of Avon. He works on all of the AJAA fields and helps install, tear up, and tear down whatever may be needed with a smile on his face. I've just met you for about 5 minutes, and I can attest you do smile a lot.
Thank
so
you.
I love that. Absolutely love that. He has spent 12 hours helping the Avon Education Foundation set up for the Mardi Gras night until the wee hours of the morning, and has helped at the Avon Outdoor Learning Center cleaning up graffiti. He cuts down trees. He gets a tractor out to the Avon Middle School North to help keep the fields playable. He tears down playground equipment at White Oak. Is there anything that you don't do? Fantastic. I love you, man. I love you. Honestly, we can't put into words all the things that he does because we can't keep up with somebody like Mike Clark. Mike will find, let me start with this. You can't put into words what a valuable asset you are and what a great person you are to have here in our town, and we appreciate you, Mike. He finds time and knows that his time is valued here, and we appreciate that. He never cares to be in the spotlight, which is a reason that he is up here on this big screen right here in front of everybody in the town. He doesn't like to be in the spotlight, which is why we think you actually deserve to be in the spotlight. Sometimes the most deserving need to be shouts. Sometimes the most deserving deserve to be in the spotlight, and that's why you're here tonight. He appreciates and loves our schools and community, and the fact that he does so very much for every community partner is worth recognizing. On behalf of the entire town, Mike, thank you for shining bright. Thank you for providing support to our schools. We have all kinds of things for you here. Thank you for serving without the desire for the spotlight. And thank you for always being willing to show kindness to those around you. Mike Clark, we present to you this plaque and this award as a small token of our appreciation. Thank you so much. Mike Clark, everybody.
Thank you.
Would you like to say anything?
I had a long speech prepared, but I'm just going to wrap that up real short. I'm not the type of guy that looks for recognition, but when I get it, it sure feels really great. So I do want to thank Nicole for mentioning this to me for you guys. I love the community. I love the town, love the schools, and I love my family. Without their sacrifices to allow me to be able to do this, I wouldn't be standing here today. So thank you all.
Take a 5-minute recess so we can grab some pictures.
Thank you.
Call the meeting back to order. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda.
Ryan, we're in agreement with NDOT and everything on the agreements, right? I mean, it seems pretty straightforward, but I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, good question. These are like standard NDOT agreements, and when we do federal aid projects, NDOT actually bids those projects, so that's why we have to do these agreements. They'll probably be the last couple agreements we have to do, because as you guys know, we're changing to the federal exchange, and so we won't have to do this anymore. We'll be allowed to bid our own projects, but this last section of Dan Jones is our last federal aid project, so last time, hopefully.
Yeah, it was a great read, but I thought I'd ask.
Oh, sorry, Steve, you shouldn't have read it.
I have no, I mean, I'll be glad to make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Got a first, second. Got a first and a second. Any further discussion, gentlemen? If not, Julie, would you mind taking a roll call, please?
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Aaron Teveba,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Moving on, the next item is public comment. The public may discuss items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. If you would, please come up to the mic, state your name and address. Seeing no one coming forward, going to close that public comment session. Moving on to council comment and liaison reports. Start with you, Aaron.
Yeah, a couple things from the police department. They have one new officer slated to begin on Monday. They're to launch the AWARE program this week, which Chief Nugent will be speaking on this evening, bringing us up to speed on all those details. And they are doing backgrounds, investigations for their remaining positions, hoping to start 2 more January 3rd, which will still leave 2 spots remaining. And outside of that, very excited and appreciative to have 100 South open this next week. So thank you to all the staff that worked hard on that this year. It's a huge project, and my wife will finally stop asking me what day it opens. So thank you for that as well.
Thanks, Aaron.
That's all I have.
Greg.
Couple of things. I attended the redevelopment commission meeting on Monday on today's Thursday. So yesterday, Wednesday, the economic development partnership board meeting. Again, 100 South looks great. We're anticipating great things on the 24th. Also, the bridge here just west of Town Hall on 36 is now open. If you haven't seen that, so that's another good thing. I guess that means winter's coming. All these projects are coming to an end, or certainly being delayed till next year. A couple of other things. I wasn't here. I was out of town over the weekend with the opening of Cooper's Hawk, but I just want to let them know that I really appreciate their persistence. I know with the pandemic, they put their project on hold, and they still continue to commit to Avon, and we are nothing more than extremely, extremely excited to have them here. And another item, one of our employees was injured, Chuck McGee, and I don't know if he's still in the hospital or not, but keep Chuck in your prayers as he recovers from those injuries. And then I also met today with a developer regarding a potential project out at Turner Trace, which could be something very exciting for the town as well. That's all I have.
Thanks, Greg. Steve.
I've had some meetings with one developer, just talking about some things that he had on that. We'll see when that comes forward to us. Yes, on Cooper's Hawk, I've already been there twice. Member of the wine club now. Carlos, the general manager, he does a great job, and it's just very friendly opening, and the staff is well trained there, and it's great during this time of pandemic that we can get trained people working there, so it worked well. Township, I had a meeting on the Transportation Committee, and right now we're doing some planning. Basically, it's going to be some phone checking with communities and what we can do to see if we can get a bus service working. And so anyway, without going any more on that, that's in the early planning stages. Let's see. Other than that, recycling district will meet here on the 23rd, and salary resolutions and things like that. Nothing really I can think of heavy. Congratulations to Mike Clark. That was great to hear that. And yes, for Chuck and our prayers. I appreciate staff keeping us informed what's going on there. That's all I have.
Thanks, Steve. I've got a couple items. I had a township board meeting last week. They have a new HR director has started. They are updating their parks website. They also discussed raising the fire and EMS rates to be a little more competitive. They also, similar to Nova Award, they had some really good news. They awarded 2 civilians for administering first aid for a heart attack victim. They're pretty sure that man would have died without their involvement. So that was really great news. WCCD board meeting earlier this week, no real update from them. I wanted to let you guys know about the Annexation Committee. We met with the library board and they resoundingly voted in favor of the spirit of what we're doing, not just this individual particular annexation. So we've sort of invented the wheel. So we'll be coming back with this intent in the future. And then earlier today, Ryan and I met with AIM and Duke Energy just to discuss some of the issues that not only us, but other municipalities around the state have been having. So that is it. We'll move on to new business liability insurance renewal. Ryan?
Yeah, I'm going to have Jeff from Highland come up, and I have a little bit of new information that I'll pass that to you just real brief. Jeff is kind of introducing our renewal information to you.
It's nice and simple. You would have thought I could have figured that part out. But good evening, Council. Ryan said the agenda was pretty full tonight, so I'll be pretty brief, but certainly open to any questions that you might have. After the work session that we were a part of earlier in the summer, we did, as agreed, shop the coverage that is with Astra. So the package and excess liability. We went to both Intact, which is the old One Beacon, and to Travelers. Travelers did provide a quote. We got it late yesterday afternoon, so that's the reason why it wasn't in your original proposal. But they did provide a competitive quote. They came in just $594 actually higher than Astra. So Astra's slightly less than what Travelers came in at. Travelers was impressed with the town of Avon. They did a loss control call with Ryan and Chief Stoops, and I'd say it was, a very well received loss control call. Left Travelers very interested, and I think that showed in that they made a competitive bid, but still slightly higher than Astra. The second major area of coverage is the workers' comp, and we had talked at the work session, IPEP has been a carrier that has, especially the police force, has been extremely happy with, and they had committed to a flat renewal from a rate perspective. So even though the premium's up with workers' comp, it's all in the payroll increase. So their actual rate stayed the same. So that was, good to see from IPEP. And then on the cyber liability, I put this in our proposal, but I would like to reiterate really how important Ryan and really getting the IT consultant involved to work to get MFA implemented with your cyber security controls. That is the reason we were able to obtain a renewal from Travelers. And while it's an increase to go from 7,000 to 11,000, that's much less than what we're seeing on average in the industry right now. Cyber liability premiums are going up much more than that on average, and oftentimes coverages are being cut. So coverages were not cut, and, less of an increase than what we're seeing from most. Really, lastly, we did obtain some options for larger deductibles. None of them, appear attractive at all, I would say. That's what that's not unusual to find that, but it was worth checking, and we wanted to bring you that information. So happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
Discussion items in the packet. Fine, so I don't have anything.
Truth be told, I'm a little surprised I'm not hearing more questions out of Greg. You usually
As
are.
he just mentioned, if we increase our deductible, it's really not a savings to us. I mean, if we bump that up to 2,500, we save $280. So the net is $1,300-$1,200 more. So I agree, keep the deductibles at $1,000 a piece.
Okay.
The other side of it, cyber liability is the biggest thing out there. Workman's comp went up because of payroll, so I think everything is status quo. There was one question that was asked at that workshop session by Deputy Chief Nugent, about how, we've had some vehicles that had accidents. They're not our fault. We're going to get reimbursed through other insurance companies. Where do we stand on that? What was your research on that? And how do we see that? Is that more like a rolling 12 months that we see this, or?
So I did ask for an actual report on that. That's something that I could a deliverable that I could give back to you. And they don't generate any type of an actual report that shows the subrogation recovery. But as the subrogation receipts are received, they do reduce the amount of, it does directly reduce the amount of claims payments that were made. So it immediately improves the loss ratio. So it does get updated as the payments are made. We received one subrogation recovery this summer, maybe a couple months ago, that was around $20,000. And so what we did do with that is we made sure that both claims and underwriting were on the same page, and that the underwriters that, determine the pricing were aware that claims had received, that payment from subrogation. So I wish they provided some type of a report that could just be handed over to really show all that, but I did get assurance that it's being factored in, and had a few calls to make sure that was happening with the pricing.
I mean, if you could work on that through this, for up till next year at this time, where we do see that claim subrogation and underwriting, that we do know that we're getting credit for that. And those premiums, if not increasing, may even go down. Who knows? Thanks.
Very fair question. Absolutely. Any others at all? No? All right. Well,
So Jeff, if they're okay with it, what we need from them tonight is to approve the quote for $208,034. And you need them to provide us guidance on the terrorism premium as well. In the past, we've passed on that premium. And I think, is that your continued recommendation?
it's the most common approach. It's a very difficult thing to necessarily recommend, but
Yep.
it's very commonly declined.
Okay.
What is the most coverage you're going to get for that premium?
The tricky part on that is it takes an incredibly large act of terrorism for it to trigger terrorism coverage. So we tend to see terrorism coverage accepted in, really like large downtowns, areas where somebody is concerned about a really catastrophic event. but, you know, it's difficult to necessarily recommend one way or the other on that.
Like predicting the next earthquake in central Indiana.
That's a fair comparison.
Is there any further discussion? If not, take a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the liability insurance renewal for an amount not to exceed $208,034, and that we do not take terrorism coverage at this time. Reject that item.
I'll second that.
We've got a first and a second. Any further discussion? Nope. Julie, would you mind taking a roll call, please? Not roll call, pardon me. Would you mind taking a vote, please?
Yeah. Robert Pope,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Aaron Teveba.
Form.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you,
thanks,
Kim.
Jeff. Appreciate it.
Next item on the agenda is the AWARE presentation by Deputy Chief Nugent.
All right, I got a green light, so I'll start talking. Mr. TV Ball asked me if he needed a neck pillow before I got started tonight, so I don't want to put too many people here to sleep, so I'll try to.
Well, if you got the green light to start, the red light means stop.
You come up here and hit the button, I got you. I apologize, I got a little bit of a cough I'm trying to get past, so I may have to drink my water here through our presentation, but we're really proud of this program that we just launched yesterday here in Avon. I know I'd spoken with Mr. Pope about this at length. I also spoke with Mr. Wade, Jared Wade, our communications director here as well. We really saw a lot of input before we pushed this program out. We've been working on this for a little under a year. And so it actually released yesterday. We've done interviews with all of the major news stations here in Indianapolis. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback. And so I just kind of wanted to give you a little bit more of a detailed idea of kind of what the program looks like. So the actual logo itself here in the center is exactly what the stickers look like. And this is a very simple program. A lot of people have different ideas to make it more elaborate, but we felt that the impact of the program would be maximized if we maintain the simplification of what it is. So all we're really doing is pushing a campaign to get these emblems on the backs of vehicles or the front doors of residences to serve as an immediate indicator to first responders that they may be encountering somebody that may have a cognitive impairment or a medical related impairment or disability. So we talk a little bit about what is the AWARE program. That is what it is. We're trying to be proactive in our initiatives here. We are funded by the Central Indiana Police Foundation for the launch of this program. And so this has not cost Avon 1 penny yet, other than my time, which some could argue is a waste of time. But for us, in the AWARE program, we're pretty happy about it. Central Indiana Police Foundation has asked us to maintain this as a pilot program in Hendricks County. So a lot of eyes are on us to kind of see how this is received by the public. Type of engagement we get as well. So a little bit more detail, people ask us, what does a cognitive impairment or a medical related impairment look like and what sort of categories? So we kind of offered these 10 sort of captions to kind of help guide that. So we talk a lot, we're hearing more and more about the autism spectrum as we have advanced testing to make these diagnoses for many of these categories here on the screen. These individuals that live each and every day with these diagnoses are struggling. They're an underserved population. And a lot of times when we hear a negative story in connection to law enforcement engagement, a lot of times it's because officers are not aware of the existence of any of these matters that are in play. If I walk up to a vehicle and somebody is non-compliant, sometimes we misinterpret that behavior. Sometimes they act what we might consider irrational, and that continues to portray itself to be possible impairment, not necessarily of medical nature, but of a toxicity from a controlled substance or alcohol. So we're trying to create a different paradigm here that we can alert our officers, our EMS, and our first responders and fire service to these types of conditions. So how does it work? Essentially, we have a website that's set up that you can go to. We created this ourselves. Again, that was also funded by the Central Indiana Police Foundation. We facilitate the program for free. Any family in Hendricks County was not required to pay a single dime for any of this. What they can do is they can go to their physicians. We have a referral form that we created. We created that form thanks to some input from some physicians here at Hendricks Regional Health who sit on boards for mental health advisory commissions all across the state of Indiana. So people from across the state ascended into a meeting. We provided them the idea of the program, and they gave us some guidance on what that form should look like. So we moved forward from there. We will train our officers on what this program means. We promote it as much as we can, and we want people to understand that this is a campaign led by law enforcement for mental health awareness and de-escalation. Again, we have to be more proactive here as well. You see the vehicle up here that has the sticker on the back? This is actually a sticker on the back of a vehicle here in Avon that specifically is a client from Project Lifesaver. So we run the Project Lifesaver program as the law enforcement liaison here in Hendricks County. We worked with the parents of a young lady who's actually in a client in Project Lifesaver to bring kind of some full circle realization here with the council. This is the family that was subject to the discussions we had about a year or so ago about having a deaf child in their neighborhood. And they came to the council and wanted to know what we were doing to be intentional. So I reached back out to that family and got their input on some of this vernacular as well. And they agreed to kind of go out, take our decal out for a spin and run it through the crew car washes and make sure it's going to endure the weathers and all of that, those sort of environments as well. So, but it's just as important as we talk about what it is important to talk about what it's not. This is not a database that compiles medical information on clients. It's not a campaign to tell law enforcement officers that they're forbidden from using reasonable use of force. It's not a campaign designed to profile or to create a stigma of any sort for anyone with a cognitive disorder or a medical-related impairment. And it's certainly not a campaign driven by funding or a lucrative platform. We don't like people that look at a program and question, why am I part of this? Who's getting rich off of this or anything like that? These emblems are being funded through the foundation, and they're free to anybody who meets the criteria to receive one. So we talk a lot in the law enforcement profession right now about autism and their encounters with criminal justice. And so a lot of this information really stuck with me at the Project Lifesaver conference earlier this year. It was just profound to start to listen to medical professionals talk about the propensity that you see between the autism spectrum disorder and law enforcement. And basically what we have is a platform in the second bullet here that talks about these are individuals that tend to struggle with their ability to communicate, comprehend, and comply. And so if you think about use of force issues that you read in the media, things that really bother you and what I consider shock your conscience, these are usually the three components that are the hurdles. We have an inability to communicate. They may have an inability to comprehend. And when we meet a section of our engagement where there's non-compliance, that's usually when you start seeing use of force. And those will start to be very negative situations. And so most of these individuals find themselves in a community or home setting. They're either placed under arrest or at least in police custody for a short period of time, or they're being interviewed. And that also creates a platform that we need to be mindful of if they're not able to comprehend what we're telling them and that they fully understand their rights as citizens. So this really stuck out to me that individuals with autism spectrum disorder are 7 times more likely to interact with law enforcement officers than their peers are. And so if we know that we have a demographic that has a heightened platform to be engaging with law enforcement, I think that leads the way why we need to be more intentional with our efforts and raise our awareness to that. So we continue to bolster our training for law enforcement. House Bill 1006, Representative Greg Sturwald, helped to champion enhancements in those training standards and what they look like at the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, as well as the annual trainings that we're requiring of law enforcement to maintain their certifications. And so the biggest hurdle, in my opinion, is the last part here. Excuse me. We talk about the law enforcement profession in general has a tendency to say, I observed a physical behavior and I interpret that to be a threat to my safety. And so we have to do a better job at educating officers on what these type of behaviors look like and helping them interpret what those actions are. Again, some examples of that: someone that might wear unusual clothing. They may demonstrate signs of agitation, repetitive actions. They may engage in self-harm. And a lot of times when you start going through this list, you start thinking to yourself, this can start to look like somebody who's non-compliant. It could sound like somebody who is intoxicated. And so we start to pay attention to these things. And simply, we have a profession that is trying their best to process what they're seeing. But we hope that the AWARE emblem helps them kind of put that into context and make them a better, more informed decision. A lot of times, cognitive disorders, they'll do things, parroting, right? So repeating and mimicking phrases. Sometimes people will interpret that to be sarcasm and being destructive and obstinate on the scene. Social distancing. It's a phrase we're using a lot more these days, but tendencies with people with cognitive disorders is they don't typically engage and understand what's an appropriate distance to be from somebody. You put that in the lens of law enforcement, and now they analyze that to say, hey, you're kind of coming into my bubble, keep my space here. So we're just trying to be more intentional. There's a few other examples here on the board of what this looks like. Obviously, in ignoring verbal commands, we use the word ignore even on this slide, but I would challenge people to reanalyze that and say, how can they ignore what they can't comprehend, right? So there are barriers here. So a lot of your common encounters are reported by the media. They're victims of crimes, but once they have the engagement with law enforcement, they tend to be looked at through a different lens to be a suspect. And so we're trying to get away from that. A lot of individuals with autism tend to wander or elope. We actually facilitate Project Lifesaver specifically for those individuals, helping us help locate them if they were to run away from home or from their caregiver in general. So these poor encounters are what highlights the allegations of excessive force, right? And that's what's difficult, because even irregardless of the circumstances that these individuals may have, justifiable use of force is going to be upheld in court, or it's going to be disputed in civil litigation. And so we also see this as I know it's a phrase Dan likes to hear, is risk management, right? An approach and investment into that. So a little bit of a difference here in the two programs. Project Lifesaver is what we already have here in Hendricks County. Aware is what we're just now launching. Both programs are free. Project Lifesaver is run by the Avon, Washington Township Fire Department, and we are an assisting component to the program there. Julia Lewis runs the program now, and she is actually taken over for Karen Utley, who's now the communications coordinator for, I think, is community engagement specialist or something of that nature with our township. So the differences being Project Lifesaver is much more expensive to facilitate. You have locative technology. And then in comparison to the Aware program, we're just going to empower our staff with understanding what it means, what it does not mean. And over the period of time, we feel confident that this will gain traction. It's already gained a lot of support, social media, the news organizations that have reached out to us. And so I just wanted to offer that as a little bit more of a detailed perspective as far as what the program is. And we'd be happy to answer any questions or listen to any comments you may have.
I'll just like to say, we've talked about this before, Brian. I'm really excited about this. This is an awesome opportunity. It seems like such a small thing that's going to make, hopefully, and what I think you envision, I think what I see is it's going to make a huge impact down the road. And if I may, I'm very proud that it's coming out of this community. And it's those reasons why Greg said it a number of times, why I think you guys are the greatest law enforcement department, not just in Hendricks County, but the entire state. So thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you, sir.
Well done.
I mean, you guys do a great job of forward thinking, and this is obviously what it is. And you talked about the approval process to get an emblem. What about the training of officers and staff? How is that going to be implemented?
That's a good question, because currently right now there is already existing curriculum about mental health awareness for law enforcement officers, right? It's actually deeply integrated in with the de-escalation campaigns. So whenever we encounter somebody that we then know has a cognitive disorder, then we employ these resources and these trainings. And so this is kind of putting that cart behind the horse, right? The horse is already there in the sense of the training that's already put in there, but we have to make sure that we have an indicator of when to deploy those resources on that scene. With that being said, some of the bullet points we've talked about tonight, we are updating and integrating with our training. Some of the material comes from the Project Lifesaver International Conference that I went to earlier this year. And a lot of it's just coming from de-escalation training from different companies throughout the country that are offering additional curriculums to law enforcement. There was one individual that presented at the conference in Project Lifesaver this year. She was a physician with Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. And she gave a lot of good talking points about autism, a lot of good talking points about dementia, and just trying to raise that awareness to take back to firefighters and police officers and train them on what it looks like. So I would say the lion's share of that training already exists before we put out Aware, but this certainly is going to build upon that and find ways to help expand it as well, which becomes part of our annual training too. So
Thank you, Brian.
you bet.
And Brian, is there some feedback that we can have, like a feedback loop, and you're having good interaction with these when they happen? We probably won't have a lot of occurrences of it, but maybe if you could describe what you think might be that.
Yeah, I think like a lot of things that we do in law enforcement, it's kind of difficult to track, right? Because we kind of live in a world where we put things into a computer system and we tell it to tell us what's already in there.
Mhm.
I think generally speaking, the feedback is going to come from having the good relationships with our surrounding agencies and just sharing stories with each other. I think overall, it's going to be hard to quantify that if an officer makes a vehicle stop on a speeding vehicle, that officer kind of goes through that cognitive process pretty quick. I don't know that there's a mechanism that we're going to mandate for them to report that, but we're confident that the ambition that the administrators and supervisors have already reciprocated to us about the program is going to take us to that level where we're going to have supervisor meetings, detective meetings, chiefs meetings, and I'm confident we'll get that feedback on a pretty regular basis. Maybe each quarter that we have those meetings, that'll be something I'll be inquiring about specifically. Say, hey, has anybody got any feedback? And we'd be happy to share that with you guys as well, and anyone else interested. I think that's critical because that's the information that we're going to need to help grow the program outside of Hendricks County. I've gotten a handful of phone calls from IMPD wanting to bring this into their community. Several people have emailed comments on social media, tagging their own police agencies about trying to bring the program there. And so for that sort of response within the first 2 days, it's pretty optimistic.
No, sounds good. That's a great way to do it too. Just talk about it and
Absolutely.
share it with other agencies.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. All right.
Well done. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Appreciate
you. Next item on the agenda is the quote for the ADA sidewalk improvements. This one you, Ryan?
Yeah, Steve and I will kind of do it together. If
Okay.
you have any questions, Steve's here to answer questions. I think the council is aware of this program. The town has an ADA transition plan. And there's a couple different ways we can do sidewalk repairs. And this is one that has been pretty popular. It actually allows us to address quite a few issues, particularly in this quote. This sawing that we would do would address 716 trip hazards. So again, as part of our risk mitigation and trying to avoid any kind of injuries or anything like that, as well as just making our neighborhoods safer and more accessible for people with disabilities. This has worked out great. Will be our, I think, 4th year of the program, and it's worked out great. This year we're proposing to do the sawing in Stone Mill, Oriole Point, and Park Place. And if we have additional dollars in it, we'll move on to another neighborhood as well. The hope is eventually we're able to do all the neighborhoods in town. There is only one company that does this precision concrete cutting, and the council does have a copy of their proposal. Their cost is not to exceed $40,000. The town does budget $50,000 for sidewalk repair, and so most of that typically goes to this program. The remaining $10,000 is, there are some that if the hazards are too wide, we really just have to replace those sidewalks. So the other $10,000 we typically spend to remove and replace sidewalk hazards as they're reported from the community normally. So happy to answer any questions, but it is staff's recommendation that the council approve precision concrete cuttings proposal in amount not to exceed $40,000, and we will pay for that from our MVH funds. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Ryan.
I'm all for it. I just want to understand how, when they do these repairs and we have this quantified in there, how does that fit into our ADA plan? You know, when we have to do that annual update of that, how does it show those numbers in there?
Well, it just shows up in a report. So actually next month, we'll be giving you guys our annual report. So we show the dollars that we spent and the number of sidewalks we repair. We haven't updated our initial ADA report, but we're probably getting close to a point in time where we'll do that, where we'll do our complete evaluation again and say, this is what we've accomplished over the first 10 years, and then reevaluate kind of what that situation is.
That's
As
exactly
I mentioned in
what
here,
I
we
was
have like
looking. Yeah.
$2.5 million worth of stuff to do. So it'll be interesting to see, we've spent this much, but now our liability is only this number.
I know it's a huge burden to try to get it, and that's, I wanted to try to show how we're taking little nibbles out of it, and maybe even 1% of where we are with that when we get that report. That'd be very interesting to see.
Yeah, and we are using that report to identify the subdivisions that had the most trip hazards. And so that's how we're picking the subdivisions that we're doing. So we're trying to eliminate as many as we can with the resources we have.
That's a good proposal, has a good breakdown of everything, shows a picture and has the savings in there. I think that's pretty neat, the 210,000 savings on repairs. That's impressive.
You know, what's interesting when you travel around the country and you look down and you see somebody is doing that in another municipality, and you go, I know what that is. We do that there in Avon. But the question that I have is on page 3 in red here. It says the municipal discount. It was to be approved prior to the 15th. Well, today's the 18th. Do we miss that timeline for one? And then my other question is, it says completed by the end of the year. So are they saying if we accept it, they'll give us a $10,526 discount as long as they have it done by the end of the year?
My understanding was that discount applied, and so if it doesn't, I'll let you know, but their proposal was for 40,000, and that's what we're accepting, so I believe the discount's in place, and they, depending on weather, will probably depend if they're able to get it done by the end of the year, but I think if the council approves this, they've said they're gonna start pretty quickly, so it's possible for them to do it that quickly, so it's possible to be done by the end of the year.
Can we
But
gross
no,
up
I
our-
wouldn't think the discount's not gonna apply.
Can we gross up our number then to, if they're going to get a discount, we have 50,000 in the budget, let's find $10,000 worth of more work while they're here.
I think we'll squeeze them, make sure we get the discount.
Ryan, one other question. So there are areas that they're going to identify when they go out there that's going to be in excess of being able to have the trip hazard removed. Do we identify those in our GIS map or anything so we can prioritize total slab replacements?
Yeah, typically, so as Gerald does the follow through on this, as they do the work, they do identify, they mark those locations. And so then normally like the year later, we try to follow behind and clean up whatever they were unable to get. That is a nice part about this. Every single cut that they make, they track in GIS too. So we'll put that into our GIS system. And so that's how we'll turn that information back around when we do our update to our plan, is we'll be able to identify everywhere we did this as well. So.
Good.
Any further questions or discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion concerning the, as presented by Steve Moore's memo and the quote, that we accept precision concrete cuttings proposal in the amount not to exceed $40,000.
Second.
We've got a first and a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. Julie?
Aaron Teveba,
4.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Thank you. Next item, quote for pavement sensor and installation. You or Steve?
I'm going to handle this one too. This was something actually I started still back when I was Public Works Director. And I know I've talked to the council quite a bit. And when we did the Avon Avenue Bridge, we installed a pavement temperature sensor and a remote weather information system, which is really just a weather station. And it provides us information. And that has been exceeded our expectations in terms of helping us make decisions about how we do snow removal and when we do snow removal. The one challenge that we have is that's in a bridge, and bridge deck temperatures and road temperatures are different. And so we have a good decision. We make decisions. We say, all right, we know when to go do the bridges. But at this point, we're kind of forced to say, well, we know the bridges are bad. That means the roads are going to be bad soon. So we tend to make decisions to be conservative and say, all right, well, let's just go ahead and treat all the roads too. To do that, it's a relatively large expense for us to go say we're going to treat every single road in town. So our thought was it would be nice to have a pavement temperature sensor that was in a different location that was further away that would also give us different information. And the other thing we find is it's shocking that things on the north side of town are not exactly the same as they are on the south side of town. Even, it's just maybe 2 or 3 miles away. We've found in storms, we've gotten 4 inches of snow in Heathermore on the north side of town, but the settlement only got 1 inch on the south side of town. And that kind of variation happens when we're doing snow removal. So really all the information we get can help us make better decisions, which means we can save money, but we can also provide better service. And so we worked with the company, which is Hoosier Company, who helped us do the installation of the sensor on the bridge deck. This installation is a little bit different because the road's already there. They are recommending it'll actually be mounted to a street light that we have at the roundabout at 200 North and 900. And it'll actually be pointed at the pavement. And so it'll actually collect the data off of pointing at the pavement, whereas the one we have in the bridge deck is actually installed in the bridge deck. For us to put it in the pavement, we'd actually have to cut out all the curb and cut up the road. And they said that's the cost of doing that additional work isn't really worthwhile. And so this is what they were recommending. This does include the installation. They've got some electrical work. We chose 200, 900 because there's actually there's electrical meter right there. So we're going to be able to tie into that. It's the shortest distance we have to go, but they'll run new electrical, run it up the pole, and then basically install the new sensor to provide us information. We're also working with DTN, who provides us our weather forecasting, and they are actually capable of also building this information into their weather forecasting, and they'll actually be able to give us projections on when our pavement temperatures will actually go below freezing. So again, helping us make better decisions. When do we start? When is the proper time to treat, which again, ultimately saves us time and money in the long run. And certainly I know this is expensive at approximately $27,000, but we spend about $400,000 a year in snow removal. Just for us to treat all the streets in town costs about $6,000 to $8,000. So we make a couple of decisions that we don't need to do that. It pays for itself pretty quick. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but otherwise staff would request approval of the pavement temperature sensor.
What if we just engage Chuck Lofton as a consultant?
He'll probably cost us more than this.
Oh, yeah. One thing that kind of catches my attention, I see they're trenching here 50 feet to do that, and part of the expenses there. Whether, the census system, the wireless ones, do you know if that's out there for this type of application?
We had that discussion. I think they recommended against it because you'd have to have your cellular, and they said that they tend to have service issues with them. They go out and then they have to be maintained.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, like the other one we do have, it has cellular service. It's been pretty reliable, but it does have issues on occasion. So they said this system was more reliable, but they do have other systems. They're also more expensive. So we felt like this was kind of meeting our need, but
Sure.
more reliable.
Now, the reason I ask is if we need to put other sensors, didn't know if that might be a more economical way. But yeah, I can see the reason why it costs this because of what they're doing. But hardwire is definitely more reliable.
Yep.
So no, that's all.
Actually, kind of in that same vein, I assume they're doing a laser temperature check. Is this any difference in accuracy versus one being installed inside the road?
No, I think they said it's pretty reliable. It's a little bit different. The one in the road actually even collects water, and it can provide information about when the road's going to freeze and what freezing temperature it'll get to. And so this system won't be able to do that because it's not actually in the ground, but it still will provide us good, accurate data on what the temperatures are. So it's a little bit of a different system, but it's still pretty accurate.
Fair enough.
I take this as basically a test project, and depending upon the results, positively or negatively, then we'll expand it to different quadrants within the town itself.
Correct. Yeah, we priced out another location at 100 South in Reagan, at that intersection. We talked about wiring it to the intersection, but because we still have some road improvements to do there, we said, let's not do that now, but we may come back in the next year or two and look at that. We also have the concrete pavement there, which again, those different type of pavements behave differently under temperatures. So again, trying to get all the information we need to make good decisions.
Any further discussion? If not, entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the quote with the Hoosier Company in an amount of not to exceed $27,751.94 for the pavement sensor as presented.
I'll second that.
We've got a first and a second. Julie?
Robert Pope,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
Aaron Teveba,
Form.
Steve Eisenbarth.
4.
Excellent. Next item on the agenda, introduction of the Eastern Gray PUD.
My name is Larry. I go all over public development companies. With me here tonight are some other individuals from Republic. Who's the head of our commercial division, Doug Wagner, who's the head of our residential division, Also with us are Jeff Banning and Jason Coyle from Banning Engineers. And I believe on, yes, and online we have Rick Arness, also the President of Republic Development, and Rick Fay on the bottom of the screen, who is with OHM Advisors out of Columbus, Ohio, who is an architectural and design firm. So we have a large group here. I want to thank you. This is an informal presentation on our part. We're not going to try to do this as we will a zoning presentation. We filed for zoning in the beginning of October for the project, and we will be heard at the first plan, or at the Plan Commission hearing next week for the first time. So with that, we thought it would be good to get in front of you, give you an overview of where we are in the process to date for the community. So with that, I think I'm in charge of the slides, if I know how to do this. I may not. How do we move this forward or back? Oh, I did. Thank you. Just took a second.
It's a PDF, Larry, so you're gonna have to ask us to scroll it, I think.
Oh, you scroll it? This does not work?
PowerPoint, so yeah.
Okay, we'll just ask.
The next slide.
Okay. So what we've done, this has been over a 2-year process to get to this point. I don't think this is brand new to any of you, at least in discussion, if not in meetings that we've had. But if you don't mind, I'll start from the beginning and just really talk about process a little bit here. We started with looking at the site and its characteristics and where it was located. So to begin with, I think everyone's familiar, but this is an interesting map from afar that shows the East and Gray location in the center of what we consider the center of Avon, related to Brownsburg, Danville, Plainfield, and Indianapolis. It's really has those 4 communities surrounding it with Avon in the middle and East and Gray in the middle of that. As we scroll to the next slide, as we get closer, and it informs our decision even more as to location and what we have. And we have frontage on US 36, we have frontage on 100 North, on 525E, and on the east side on White Lick Creek. So the project, our location, has a lot of unique aspects that we think are important to how the site gets developed. Go to the next slide. We just zoom in a little closer. And again, this just shows the site at a closer angle. You can see here the River Birch Elementary School, a little closer view of the White Lick Creek and some of the surrounding neighborhoods that are near the project. The woods on the site become apparent a little more in this slide as well. As we go to the next slide, so we looked at the site and then we tried to think what is the best way to go about this. And we came up with our vision of what this should be. We felt it should be a community that was mixed use based on traditional neighborhood development values, which are walkability, mixes of uses that are both residential and commercial, provide areas for people to gather, et cetera. So that, along with some of the physical aspects of the site, the fact we have White Lick Creek, which is a jewel for the community, the trail system. We have to commend the town for what they've done so far. And it's a fabulous opportunity for the town and the surrounding community and its residents to get out and exercise and enjoy the beauty of the White Lick Creek corridor. And we are certainly going to connect to that and preserve that area to be a great natural feature of the site. The next. So when we went through the process, and it's been over 2 years, it was a collaborative process. This just names some of the different groups we've worked with, from the municipal side, town staff and officials, the Avon schools, we've had a number of meetings with, township officials. We've had meetings with surrounding neighbors individually and in a group. And there's actually an advisory committee formed, which Dawn Loudon was on and others in the town to discuss the project and what they felt we should take into account, which we have done from the town's perspective and some of the other stakeholders. We've also done market analysis of what's the highest and best use of the areas. Worked with the design firms, OHM, which is a very experienced urban design firm, Banning, who I think you all know, great engineering firm here locally. Financial consultants and end users, home builders, retailers, multifamily builders, et cetera. So we've had a very collaborative process going on through this process that we feel has informed quite a bit how the site will ultimately be developed. Next slide, please. And again, back to, we first, even before we had the property fully engaged, we started back in May of 2019 with discovery, looking at the site, et cetera, et cetera. And then we started in basically June of 20, going through collaborative outreach, meeting with stakeholders like the town and others, refinement of our plan based on the feedback we've been getting. We look at this as really a project for the whole community. This is a large site with a lot of opportunity for us all to create something that Avon and others can be proud of. From that input through about April of this year, we then started to put together our actual PUD documents. Avon has a very thorough PUD process. So it took us really from April to October to refine that plan, design the application, and again, continue to reach out to staff and others to make sure that we were going in the right direction. And then, again, as we said in the beginning in October, we have filed the application. So it took from May of 2019 to October of 21 just to get to this point, because we really wanted to do it in a way that everyone had we understood where everyone was, their expectations were, both the town, users of the site, et cetera, and to come together with that in a way that we think we came up with a project that's going to be pretty exciting. Main design principles that went into development of it are human walkable scale. That's one of the tenets of new urbanism. You'll see a lot of trails. We have actually golf cart path trails to the community as well that are being proposed. We have a balanced mix of uses. So we have retail, we have office, we have multifamily, we have single family, targeting different age brackets and stages of life. We created there's a downtown area, what we call the Riverwalk District, which will have a heart of commercial uses in the center, a lot of gathering places and civic uses that will all interconnect in the town center. The next one, please. Activated public spaces. Again, we talked about, we'll have the civic center. We'll have a lot of common area in the project. There will be at least 2 amenity centers for the residents in the community. So there'll be a lot of places for people to gather and socialize, both publicly and in their community. We will focus closely on the architecture, make sure the project is harmonious, whether it is in the residential or the commercial areas of the project, so it fits well together. Again, when you do mixed use, it really needs to be the devil's in the details. You really need to connect people and connect the feel of the community so it blends together and it creates a synergistic feel. Avon's a tree city. We've done as much as we can with the site. We have beautiful wooded areas. We're preserving a significant amount of those in the site plan as well. And ultimately, we want to create a community area that Avon feels is really a place to gather, a place to enjoy each other's company and socialize, and have a lot of interconnected residents who live in and around the area to enjoy it, as well as Avon in a broad sense. Next slide. And here's the plan. Out of all that pre-development for a long period of time, and a lot of different, this is probably the 50th or so iteration of the plan that we worked through. We created a plan that, pointer here, 487 acres in total in size, that has neighborhoods has over 40% of the project is being preserved in open space, common open space. We expect the overall project value when it's fully developed to be 480 million or greater. The way inflation is right now, it'll probably be greater, unfortunately. But it's an impactful project for the community in a lot of ways. In the community, we have 5 different neighborhoods beyond the Riverwalk District. So here we have them listed. Area B is designed to be lots for empty nesters. It's down in the lower part of the project. This is all wooded hillside around it. It'll be beautiful. It will connect over again to the trail system, which runs through here. Area C, we try to give names to these different areas based on the type of user we think or type of homeowner we think will be in each one. So Area C are lots that would be family move-up sort of homes, homes that would be in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. In this area, some of these are, quite a few of these lots are wooded as well with surrounding, this is on a higher ground that's near the, that would fall then through the wooded areas to the low ground here. Area D, the lots get a little larger. All the garages would be side loaded. And that area, and there's a little area of D here as well. That would be what we're calling executive homes. So a step up. Usually it's a little older demographic. The kids are a little older, but it's still a large home on a little larger lot. Area E are estate homes. This again is right off of 100 North. It's 38 lots that are the largest lots in the community. And again, we're calling those estate lots and would have probably the highest value homes in the community that would be 700,000 and above. Then area F over here on this side of the community is an area of empty nester homes that are going to be age restricted to 55 and older. There's a federal act called HOPA, Housing for Older People Act, that sets forth the standards for how you have to do that. One of the restrictions is no school-age children can live there permanently. So that would be an area that would not have school-age children in it. So those are they would have their own large amenity center there in the center of their community. And for the rest of the area, there is a planned amenity center right here, which again is fairly centrally located to all the residents in here. And then in the Riverwalk District, go to the next slide if you could. Zero in on that. It's 71 acres in total. It has, you can see color coded. This is coming in off of 36, the entry. There's an existing road there now. It's going to be critical to make this a success. Mixed use is very challenging to do. You have to have the components working right. You have to get population in using the mixed use area. Will be that we have a traffic light here, which there is not one now. So we've been discussing that with the town. We've discussed it with the state. We've had our traffic engineer look at it, and that will be critical so that this retail town center feel with the potential civic use at the end can function well, be easily accessed by people who will support the retailers in this area, the restaurants. This is looked to be a little restaurant here, the entrance, office building, and then this is surrounding flats and townhomes, smaller buildings or townhomes. It would be part of the town center. And then this area would be for sale townhomes up in that area. And again, it all interconnects. This goes up and connects up into the community this way. And this goes down and connects through the low area to the town center and from the town center. And, again, back when we started this process, we looked at the town's comprehensive plan, and great minds think alike. The town had a comprehensive plan that said, you should look at a town center here. You should look at civic uses here with specialty housing around it. We absolutely agreed. We were so glad to see that the town had undertaken that study and came to that same conclusion, or their consultants had come to that conclusion, and we embraced it. So this is our vision of what that looks like and how it would work well to succeed. One of the other elements that we have that the comprehensive plan or road plan was a connecting Collector Street that would go up to 10th through the site, which this street, which on the other plan you would have seen, does that. So that is in there as well. Next slide, please. Here's a vision, potential vision of the town center. So down here, you would be on 36, you would enter, drive through. These buildings would have the commercial on the first floor with apartment flats above. Down at the end would be the civic structure that we have set aside an area for. Would love to see the town put its town buildings over there, but whatever use that ultimately becomes is looked at to be a focal point and a terminus point where there can be a lot of activation and elements going on that would tie this whole area together. Go to the next slide. This is a closer look at that terminus view. This is what we're calling the Glass Pavilion. Again, these are our visions, but we're showing them to the town and talking at length. This could be a public building that's used for public events, civic events, et cetera. It backs into a woods here that goes down a hill. So there's beautiful opportunities to create decking out here, et cetera. Winged by 2 potential civic buildings with about a half-acre event lawn in front of it. And then again, as you come across the street on the south side, you'd get immediately then into that retail area. So we love this idea. There could be other options or ways it looks, but we see this becoming that activation point in a civic sense of some way. Next slide. Part of our need to get the town center to work, to get the civic buildings to be funded, et cetera, is we're proposing 2 TIF areas in the community. One is the town center, which is here, and the other is the HOPA age-restricted area, which you can TIF as well. So we're proposing that these 2 areas go into a TIF allocation area. We've started those discussions as well. We're talking to the town's financial advisors as well about the economics of it, and we'll be coming back to talk more in detail as that comes together. But in our opinion, this is how a lot of this can get funded, and how it, when we bring in, we're looking into tenants in this area to be local. They can't necessarily pay the same rent as a Starbucks or a high-end national retailer. So we believe to make this effective and get that local flavor, we're going to have to likely subsidize the tenants. So part of the TIF funds would be used for that as well. So that's really the TIF allocation areas. Next slide. So these are just some slides showing each area with some images of the vision that we see in that area. So in the town center, you would have, this is some of your mixed use buildings, would have the commercial on the first floor, flats above. Same here. These are townhomes that would potentially populate the townhome areas that wing on the east and west side, the community. Next slide. I know I'm going through these pretty fast, but I'm trying to be respectful of everyone's time. And I think there are 25 slides in total. Again, just some other visual images of the restaurants, office, and the flats and lofts that we could potentially see in the community. Next slide. Area B, which is down in the low area. Again, empty nester. Here are some images of homes that are currently being built in a similar community that we are developing with a builder. That at this point, it could be that builder, it could be another different builders, but this is that sort of image, mainly single-story buildings. Again, targeting the empty nester, but you could see the event, occasional 2-story home as well. Next, Area C, we talked about that being first-time or move-up buyers. These are front-loaded garages. These lots are 75 feet in width. The type of home, again, that we are building in other communities with the same lot size and same demographic objective we see here. Next slide. Area D, Again, we go to a larger lot, 90 feet or wider in width. You can see here, the garages go to side load, the homes get a little bigger. Area E, next slide, please. Again, just a little bigger, a little more grand, all side loaded down in that area. Next. Area F is the senior community. Here are some of the images of product that could be in there. There would be 3 different lot sizes and price points, but again, it'd all connect and be one community as a whole. Next slide. So those are the neighborhoods. This is just showing the areas of tree preservation. Mainly it's through these hillsides. This is all farm field here up now. There is one little wood lot that we'll be preserving those farm fields. But pretty much all of the vast majority of these areas that are on the hillsides will be preserved in the woodlands. Next slide. And again, we talked about connectivity, or I talked about the connectivity of the site. Again, one of the main goals is create amenities that are centrally located. So this is centrally located in here. The amenity center here is centrally located for these folks. The civic center and retail centrally located in here. So each one is that. And then we have connecting trail systems. They come down to the White Lick Trail, which is this existing dashed line that we would connect in 2 or 3 spots, actually 3. We're talking about putting a trailhead in. We've been asked by the town to put a trailhead in for people who would be driving in the park so they can get on the White Lick Trail. There'd be golf cart trails, et cetera, through here that all interconnect as well. Next slide. And that's it. So sorry I kind of went through that quick, but it was a lot of slides and I didn't want to keep you here all night. So with that, thank you for your time. Any questions you have, we will try to answer. You will be seeing us back, Plan Commission willing, with a favorable recommendation in a month or 2.
Larry, I have a couple questions while you're here.
Sure.
What's your timeline on this? Obviously, this is like a 10 to a 12, maybe 15-year build out.
Correct.
What's your timeline and what phases are you going to execute first?
We do have a phasing plan that's been submitted as part of the Plan Commission package. I don't believe we have it here tonight, but we will come in with the town center will be done in 2 phases. So we'll come in with a core phase, the light and the main entry first. The 2 connecting roads will also go around. The middle section of the age-restricted community would be in phase 1. Parts of the other lot areas will be in phase 1 that all interconnect. There are approximately 700 total single-family lots that are going to be for sale and 140, I believe, townhomes. So in the town center. So the sellout for that will probably be 6, 7, 8 years, plus a year or 2 between now and the time the first home starts to go up. So yes, it's going to be a 10-year sellout, 3 to 4 phases. Each one will be timed. We'll try to keep the flexibility. So if one area is selling quicker, we can get to that phase of maybe the 70 and 90, the areas C and D. We could do a second phase there before we do the second phase of the age restricted or the town center or vice versa. But each area is small enough as its own that it's typically only 2 phases. The senior housing area, age restricted, is 3 phases. I think everything else is 2 phases.
What about parking? Are there going to be more parking garages? Is that what you're going to have than surface?
So we've had OHM, our consultants out of Columbus, have looked very closely at the parking. And this plan will evolve somewhat, but they have this adequately parked for the needs of that community. The townhomes will all have their own garages, 2-car garages. The flats, some of those buildings may have integral parking in the buildings as well. There's not a parking deck planned. However, there's been discussions with the town that it's possible. There's room to do that if we need more parking or they decide, there's going to be a bigger building or more need for it.
Question,
Yeah.
just curious, we've had history in the past where we tried to develop properties with commercial use on the base level and then residential on the top. And it was just, and it could be, this is so long ago because it was just before the housing bust, 2007, 8. And it was Satori Point area where they were going to have that. And that model just didn't pick up very well. And then we also saw in Plainfield that the same thing, the Metropolis, they had the bottom level and the top level, and that model didn't work well. Is there some proof or something that you see now that this model might be working? And is there any background you can give us that might give us some hope in that for that model?
It's a challenging model, and we've done this before. We've done it successfully before to some degree, and we can point at areas around here, Carmel, for example, where they have quite a few mixed-use buildings that are being done successfully. When you're doing it off, we're not doing this along the highway, so that's tougher for the retailers. We're bringing them into the community. That's why it really it's like, how do you bake a cake? Well, you can have all the ingredients and still fail, right? You have to have them in the right place and at the right time. So that is why this is created. But again, that's also why we need to subsidize rents, which is part of the TIF, is we want to be able to, if these buildings, based on their costs, would require a $40 rent per square foot, for these local tenants to survive and thrive, it might need to be $25. And so that subsidy has to happen. That's the uniqueness of the way we're going to present this as part of the TIF. So that should be a strong value to those retailers to want to come in. And a lot of it is in the secret sauce of how you integrate all these uses. That's why we need dense housing around it. You got to have housing around it. Sometimes these things are built where that's not the case. So there's a lot that goes into it.
Okay. I know it's a hard answer, but I agree with what you're saying, that they're remotely off the heavy traffic area and going back there. So that makes sense. It's more of a different environment back there.
And that's why we embrace doing the collector, because that'll bring traffic into here, and this road that will go up, and all the housing we'll be putting up in here. We're trying to provide, and having a light here, providing all the access points possible to make this. But once you get into a town center that's walkable, it's got a different feel than other things. And I won't pick on anyone, but some of them don't have those other components. They're standalone, and they try to put the retail with, kind of a one-off deal, and it's more difficult.
I follow.
But this is going to be, you got to activate it. You got to have, farmers markets, civic events. You got a lot of stuff going on here. So people are thinking in the entire Avon community, top of mind, even from Danville or wherever, hey, let's go out to Easton Gray and have dinner tonight. There's going to be a concert in the park. There's going to be this and that. You got the trail system, so we'll be trying to make that connection work as well. So,
okay, thank you.
I won't go into any more detail. My only question, this is exciting, and this is kind of like the wow factor. And I know you've probably had many conversations. Those self-storage units are right in front of it. How do we get rid of those?
we reached out, and they didn't show an interest in selling. I don't know what it would take. We would love to see it gone. I think we can be successful without that happening, but it would certainly be better by a long stretch.
Don't give up.
I'll reiterate what Greg said. It's wow factor here. I'm really excited about this opportunity, but as you kind of put it, the devil's in the details. Today's not the day. I'm going to be interested to see what level of subsidy we need to provide for those renters. I think one of the things that's exciting about this is this seems to be one of our first true attempts at a PUD, at a multi-use PUD. And I don't want to throw that away if we're, the goal being to diversify our tax base. I don't want to throw that away if we have to throw that tax money away to subsidies. On another note, another thing that I've been hitting back our PUD petitioners is our architectural standards. It looks like you're not going to have too much of a challenge with that, but I want to make sure you keep an eye on those details. Again, the devil's being in them. You already hit up on the trees. I was really concerned about that. It looks like we're gonna keep a large portion of those trees. Keep it up. That's I think that's all I've got for now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've started yet or not, and I'm sure Mr. Banning's advised you, but anytime we add residential into a TIF, there's an impact on our school corporation. So I'd make sure we're adding them into those conversations and see how we can work that out for them. I know you mentioned there would be, is it 700 some
I think it's
single
technically
family?
699, but I
Okay.
rounded up to 700 single-family homes, yes.
And that's not including the age restricted, or that is?
That is included.
Okay,
It
so
does not-
obviously-
Does not include the town center area, which
Okay.
has townhomes and flats.
So obviously the age restricted, there would be no burden of students
Correct.
within there. But in the Riverwalk District, having those townhomes and such inside that TIF can be an issue. So I would just like to see for most effective and to be prepared, to just have conversations with them, make sure we can work out any details early on.
Now, we've had multiple conversations already. They've actually provided us with their school, pickups from each various community, and there's been analysis done, which when we get into the TIF, we'll be providing that. The FSG groups, I think, just put out the fiscal analysis for the thing, which I think looks fairly positive, but I don't know that they took into effect the TIF when they did that. So, but they're
Okay.
aware of it. So we've
Thank
talked
you.
to them about it and presented it. You know?
Any further questions or discussion?
No.
All right.
Great
we-
introduction. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Very good.
Here we go. Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2021-22, approving establishment of economic development area. Is this you, Ryan?
Yes, sir. So I think the council is aware you've had some previous action on this process earlier, and this is to create the Avon Logistics Allocation Area. This is the final step in the process. It has started at the Redevelopment Commission. It went to the Plan Commission, then it came to the Town Council. Then it went back to the Redevelopment Commission, who held a public hearing. And they have adopted the confirmatory resolution. So this is actually the final step in the process. And again, this is to create the allocation area for Avon Logistics. It is not a new TIF. It's just creating an area to capture the revenue that was already in the Avon Economic Development Area. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2021-22, approving the establishment of an economic development area as presented.
Got a first?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Got a first and a second. Any further discussion? Nope. Julie?
Greg Zuzen,
For,
Steve Eisenbarth. 4. Robert Pope,
4.
Aaron Teveba.
Form.
Looks like the last item on our agenda is the public hearing and final reading of ordinance 2021-28, the additional appropriation. Do I need to open the public hearing first? All right, at this time, we'll open a public hearing at 8:26 PM. If you have anything to speak on this issue, please come up to the mic, state your name and your address. Not seeing anyone come forward. We'll close the public hearing at 8:27. Oh, that's on you now, Ryan.
Yeah, this was introduced at the last meeting, and so just in case anyone wasn't there, there were a couple of items the town council approved, specifically some CARES Act funding items, purchase of some body cameras and in-car cameras for the police department, and then the new website modernization and update that we're doing as well. The town council approved both those items to be used care funds, so we do have to do an additional appropriation, which is really just the act of adding the money to the budget to allow us to spend it. I did also add in a couple additional things just to give the town some flexibility as we move forward. Those two things were, I added $100,000 for personnel services. Every year, overtime tends to get close towards the end of the year. So just to make sure that we have flexibility and that when Calvin does the books, that we don't want to overspend what we allocated. So again, just to give us a little bit of flexibility, cover some overtime, we put some money in there for personnel services. And then I put in 50,000 for professional services as well. Again, just to cover, one of the concerns was, which we just did, was the liability insurance. We did budget 186,000, and so there is a little bit of additional cost there. We want to keep up with that. We want to pay our premium this year so that we don't fall behind, which is what we were doing previously. So again, just to give us a little flexibility, make sure we have the ability to cover all those costs. And so that's where there's an additional 150,000 in there on top of the 160 that the town council approved from the CARES Act fund. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Ryan?
I'm looking at the professional services is 85,000 and you said 50. Is it changed?
Correct. So it's 50 for that I added for additional for liability insurance, and then it was 35 for the website. So
Okay.
that's the
Okay,
85.
I gotcha.
And then the 121 in capital outlays was for the police, body cameras and in-car cameras, and then the personnel services was the 100,000.
So the remaining balance on this other sheet then is correct then, or it should?
That's
be 50?
correct. So the additional 150,000 that I'm proposing
Uh-huh.
as additional appropriation would just come out of the general fund. And so as you guys know, when we went through the budget process, our general fund is continuing to grow. So we would capture that out of the general fund. And so, yes, Greg, the amount we have remaining is what we would still have remaining from the CARES Act.
I would ask on that remaining balance of 232, 389, that we all kind of sit down and talk about what we may or may not need it for and get input from everybody.
Yes, plus we did receive our first installment of ARP money too, that we'll be having a discussion on. It may not be to the end of this year, but probably first part of next year, we're going to start talking about how we want to spend that money as well. So we'll lump all those conversations together.
I mean, these are one-time events.
Yeah.
And we certainly shouldn't be using it to cover our operating expenses, that's for sure, or we'll be in deep trouble.
That's maybe something we can get a work session. Maybe probably pretty challenging before the end of the year. But let's keep that on the radar. I like that idea. Any further discussion? If not, entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. Ordinance 2021-28, additional appropriation be accepted as presented.
Does that motion need to include the dollar amount, Dan? As presented. Roger that. Thank you. We've got a first.
Second.
We've got a first and a second. Further discussion? Nope. Julie?
Aaron Teveba,
Or
Robert Pope,
Four.
Steve Eisenbarth,
4.
Greg Zuzen.
Four. All right. Legal counsel comment. Mr. Taylor.
Yes, we met today with your department heads in order to work on the annual risk management plan review, which we did. Appreciate the hard work of the department heads on that issue. You will see an annual report come to you then a little bit later, maybe in December, which will give you an update on their recommendations, any changes to the plans. But I would tell you that in general, it's been a really good year for risk management. Your department heads have done a good job, but we have taken a good hard look at it once again. We also had an internal controls review committee today so that we analyze that as we are required to. And you will be receiving a report about that as well, about any issues you've had with that, which you've had none, but you'll be receiving that report formally in December as well. We started to work on some year-end things. So you had before you tonight your nepotism certifications and your conflict of interest. So those, we feel like we're working a little bit ahead on those, given how the end of the year kind of goes fast when we get into December. So I think we're ahead of that. That's all I have to report to you tonight.
Thank you. Next, the second public comment section. If you would like to speak in a public comment, please come forward, state your name, address. Seeing none, close that public comment section. Last opportunity, council comment.
I have one thing with all this seems like accelerated growth that we're going through now. I mean, it's rolling pretty rampant. We need to get out ahead of road expansion because we're catching up. And anytime there's a new road, it's a 3-year process. Once you do the right-of-way acquisitions and the appraisals of the property and the design work and you bid it out and things like that. And so, I mean, we'll never get caught up. I understand that, but we got to kind of start to get a little bit ahead of it. And I don't know if that's on the, obviously we're doing it now in 100 South. We're kind of expanding Dan Jones going south to at least 150. But maybe that next one we should be working on right now, obviously, is 900 from 36 to 100. And we're going to start on that. But, 100 north, those are 2 relievers from 36. And my concern with NDOT on Highway 36 is they're full speed ahead. And I'm not sure I'm sold on the fact that we want 6 lanes all the way out past, basically out to Town Hall. And there's, the schools and there's other people that have voiced their opinions as well. And so take it a step at a time for them. And if we make our improvements, we can relieve some of that congestion where maybe it doesn't go that far. Maybe it only goes to Walmart or Dan Jones or wherever it may be. But I think we've got to start to focus on that and get a little bit out ahead of it. And if that means we need a consultant or somebody to help us go through that, let's look at engaging them and see what we need to do, because we're starting to get people to come here and start to do infill projects. Those gaps, those holes that we've created where the farmer sold his agricultural land but kept the homestead, and now they're tearing the homestead down, and you got 10 acres here, 15 acres there that they're starting to build up around. So those are my only comments on that.
I think good comment. I might just throw in there too, is that, Greg, I support you on that. One thing we could do is work with Indianapolis on getting the railroad bridge trestle there on 100 North. Because once that is expanded, such as it was done in Plainfield and in Claremont, I mean, there's precedent for it. Once that's done, then that opens up us to be expanding the width of 100 North, which would be a great bleeder to take some stress off 36. So yeah, we just have to work at it. We have to really put some effort at it. It's hard, but it's worth the effort.
We've always got room for improvement. I just wanted to, next Thursday is a holiday. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Be safe. Spend some time with loved ones.
On the next meeting, there is no work session at 5:30.
Well, that's next item, council calendar.
Yeah, the next meeting is, we still our 1st and 3rd of next month. And yes, we are going to do a work session at 5:30 on December 2nd, if that works for everybody.
I will not be here
You won't be here.
for either one on December 2nd.
Yeah, I will not. I'll be out of the country, so I will not be here.
Well, yeah, now you're getting into Christmas, and we all have things coming up. My granddaughter has a thing, so who knows?
Okay. Well, so there are a couple of things. So I'll talk with Dawn and Robert, but there are a couple of things we do have to, we do have some end of year stuff that has to get done. Julie's ordinance to balance the budget. And so there are some things. So hopefully at a minimum, if we can't do the work session, we can probably do something else, but we do probably need to find a way to at least have 2 meetings in December. So thank you, Steve and Aaron, for letting us know that.
Will we have a quorum? Greg, will you be here? I'm going to take a chance that Dawn will be able to make this one. I believe she will. At least we have the quorum for the council meeting. The work session, I don't want to say is not as important, but it's not an official business meeting. Are you guys okay? Greg, you'll be here. Steve and Aaron, you will not for the council meeting. Got it. So
Yeah.
I think we should have the quorum to host the meeting. Let's see what we have to get those work session items.
Yeah, I'd say if that's the case, doing a work session with only 3 isn't quite as effective. I know
Sure.
we moved the October one for that reason. So yeah, I'll maybe get with Dawn and Robert and we'll maybe look at if there's another time, or we'll look at what's on the agenda for that work session and see if we can hold off or do them another time.
We wouldn't want to put, I don't believe we'd want to push that work session out all the way until the next council meeting, till the council meeting on the 16th. I don't believe that's going to fit with what's going to need to come on that agenda.
I'm gonna have to look and see again. I
Okay,
don't recall off the top of my head what it is, but
We'll discuss.
there are a couple things on there, so.
That's it. Meeting adjourned.